What's up, everybody? Welcome to another World Cup preview. Today, all about Costa Rica. Already into the second half of these previews, Costa Rica is kicking off Group E. Before I get into that, though, I want to say quickly, make sure you hit that subscribe button right here on YouTube so you don't miss the rest of my World Cup previews as well as the other content I put out every single week. And you can find all of my written stuff on Substack, touchlinetalk.substack.com, as well as on Medium. I am posting stuff there now, too. Today, Costa Rica, sixth World Cup appearance for those Ticos, 1990, 2002, 2006, 2014, and 2018. So this makes it 3 in a row for Costa Rica. Best finish, that run to the quarterfinals in 2014, if you remember that. They have not reached those heights before or since. That is their best showing in the World Cup. To get to Qatar, Costa Rica automatically entered final round of CONCACAF qualifying as one of the higher rated teams in the FIFA World Rankings, alongside the likes of the United States and Mexico, getting into that last round automatically. 7 wins, 4 draws, 3 losses, put them in 4th place, which means they went to the Interconfederation playoff against New Zealand. Joel Campbell gets a 3rd-minute goal. That's enough to see the game through. They beat New Zealand and booked their spot in Qatar as the 4th CONCACAF team going to the tournament. In terms of players to watch, usually I struggle a little bit whether it's the 5 that I select for my written previews or the 3 I highlight on these videos. Not the case here. It was pretty cut and dry, both for the 5 and for the 3 I'm going to talk about. That's just kind of the reality of this Costa Rica team. I'll explain why part of that is at the end. But for now, first player to watch, name to know, Francisco Calvo. You might have heard of Francisco Calvo, longtime Major League Soccer guy, Chicago, Minnesota, San Jose. San Jose in July sold him to Konyaspor, so he is over in Europe at this point. He played the most minutes during qualifying of any Costa Rica player. He had 3 more starts during qualifying than any other outfield player for Costa Rica. He was one of those guys that just did not come off the field. He was in there game in, game out. And over this World Cup cycle has really solidified himself as one of the centerpieces of this Costa Rican defense. He can get you a goal here or there. He's proven that throughout his career. He is a aerial threat. And he is just one of the first names on the team sheet for this Costa Rica side at this point. So, had to include him in here. Second guy, Joel Campbell. Joel Campbell has had a fascinating career. At one point, he was one of the more hyped, young up-and-coming stars in the world. In his early 20s, he's at Arsenal and starting in the quarterfinals of that 2014 World Cup for Costa Rica. It never really happened for him at Arsenal. He then kind of went on European journey number 2, bounced around to different countries, different clubs, most of them a little bit lower profile, and ultimately ends up in Mexico, which is where he finally kind of found his home. He, had some at least fairly productive seasons in Europe, but it was a lot of 1 and 2 year stints. Never found that place where he could sort of settle in and get into a rhythm. He has found that in Liga MX. The other thing I want to mention, aside from, as I already highlighted, so Joel Campbell's the guy who scored the goal against New Zealand to get his country back to the World Cup. He was important during qualifying. He is the primary attacking threat at this point for this team. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, but the other thing I want to highlight now. Joel Campbell has played 527 minutes in the 2 World Cups, 2014, 2018. He's been a part of this Costa Rica squad. He has a goal and 2 assists. For a team that is not known for their attacking prowess, and for a guy who hasn't exactly become what people thought he might be able to, he shows up and has had really good performances at the World Cup, and it puts up numbers, actually contributes to goals and assists. So that is something I wanted to highlight here and give Joel Campbell some credit. Because 2014, 2018, he was one of the guys who was actually putting goals on the score sheet for this Costa Rica team. So he is, the defense is what's going to get highlighted here, but this is a team lacking in attacking depth and attacking prowess. Joel Campbell was the one attacker I felt like I had to include on this list, And he is going to be an incredibly important part of this team because what he can give you offensively for a team that struggles on that part of the field. And then third, you can't talk Costa Rica without talking Kayla Navas. Kayla Navas is easily the most accomplished player in CONCACAF, this entire region. Now, Canada's Alphonso Davies ultimately is going to at least give him a run for his money, if not surpass him. But Alphonso Davies has, his one Champions League triumph with Bayern Munich right now. Kayla Navas has started 4 Champions League finals for 2 different teams. He won 3 Champions Leagues in a row with Real Madrid, started all 3 of those, then got back and lost with PSG, where he is now. He has a La Liga title, he has 2 Ligue 1 titles. He's played on the biggest stages with the biggest clubs, with the biggest names. He's seen it all at this point. Currently, he is PSG's backup, sort of the emergency guy there, the support guy for Gianluigi Donnarumma. I'm not going to get into a debate about which one of them should be starting, all of that. I just wanted to acknowledge he is currently a backup. He is not getting regular minutes. That is something to note heading into this World Cup. At the same time, this is Kayla Navas, and I'm just not too worried about that. He is the face of this team, the face of this international side. What you think when you think Costa Rica soccer, you think Kayla Navas. He has been sensational. It is not all that often you have somebody on a team lacking in big names that has done, basically everything at the club level. I'm going to get more into him later as well, but absolutely a name you need to know about this team. It starts with Kayla Navas. In terms of a breakout star, I'm going with Anthony Contreras. Anthony Contreras was just integrated into this team at the very end of qualifying. He got called into that final World Cup qualifying window, scored goals in back-to-back games, and then proceeded to play the entire game in that Interconfederation playoff against New Zealand. If that doesn't tell you how trusted he is at this point, I mean, he could end up playing a huge role in Qatar, which is one of the reasons I went with him. The other one is, quite frankly, this Costa Rica team does not lend itself to young breakout stars. This is a very established team and a core group of veterans, so the options are limited. But in the calendar year 2022, Anthony Contreras has made himself a very, very important part of this team. And again, a team looking for different options offensively. He's providing one. He's putting the ball in the back of the net. He's still plying his trade club-wise in Costa Rica, in the Costa Rican League, but didn't have to. When I started looking into this, it very quickly became clear to me this is the guy who's set up for a breakout tournament. He's probably going to get his chances. He could end up playing a big role for this team in a position where they need a little bit of energy, something a little bit different, a little bit of creativity, and Anthony Contreras can certainly provide that. The bottom line with this Costa Rica team, your reason for optimism, your reason for hope is Kayla Navas. This is not the same Costa Rica team that got to the quarterfinals and very nearly reached the semifinals of the 2014 World Cup. It is a lot of the same pieces because Costa Rica has gone through this fascinating thing, similar to what happened to the U.S. men's national team, where there is just I'm going to call it a generation. It's not literally a generation, but there's just this age group. That's probably the better way to put it, that is missing. You have the young players like Contreras who are starting to make their international debuts and starting to become contributors on this national team. And you have the group of guys who have been around since 2014. There's not all that much in between. And so it hasn't sort of progressed and carried over where you have a couple guys who stay, but then you've got some new pieces you added in 2018, and then you're adding another set of pieces for 2022. This roster looks a lot like the U.S. men's roster that's going to Qatar. You've got some some older players who have been around, and particularly on this Costa Rica team, it's heavily on those experienced guys. And then you've got some of those younger players that have never done this before, like the U.S. has a lot of. So it's not a perfect comparison, but both teams, you're missing sort of this age group in the middle of guys who are supposed to be in their primes right now in 2022. So this team is nowhere near as dangerous as that 2014 version. What makes them dangerous, if you want to point to something, is the fact that they have a goalkeeper who can win you games and get you points single-handedly. You have to actually put the ball behind Kayla Navas. And Costa Rica has been solid defensively. That's what they do. They're difficult to break down. They're compact, which is going to limit your amount of chances, and you got to find a way to actually score. Otherwise, they've got a chance. And so any situation you can lay out that leads to Costa Rica having a successful tournament starts with Kayla Navas. There are not a lot of teams in their position that have somebody in goal like him. He proved in the Interconfederation playoff, he's still got it. He is special. He's been one of the best goalkeepers in the world. I mean, easily top 5 over the past decade or so. That is your reason for optimism, is you have him in net. My concern, my big question, can they score enough goals? Does this team have enough goals in it? 5 goals in 5 games at the 2014 World Cup, 2 goals in 3 games at the 2018 World Cup, 13 goals in 14 games during the CONCACAF section of qualifying, and then 1 more in the Intercontinental playoff. They proved in 2014 they don't have to score that many goals. You know, it was some shootouts, it was some 0-0s. They just kind of found a way to get through. But eventually they ran out of luck. You can't just keep playing for draws in the knockout rounds and hope you win every single shootout. And in this group, with 3 teams that are dynamic in attack, you got to score goals. You simply have to score goals if you want any hope of getting out of this group. So that's where Anthony Contreras comes in. That's where Joel Campbell comes in. Kayla Navas in that defense gives you a chance where you don't have to score 2 and 3 to win all of these games. But to hang with the Germanys and Japans of the world, and Spain as well, right? This is a really, really difficult group. They were not great during qualifying. This is a whole nother level they're going to have to go to. The difference has to be the attack. They have got to score more goals and create more chances. That is very simply my question. And I will close by saying I have an incredibly hard time seeing how this team gets out of this group. Even with Navas, that it's just a difficult point in the cycle of this national team. They are very much on the downward trajectory, not the upward trajectory. And the draw did them no favors, as I already mentioned. What I could see happening is a world in which one of these other teams in the group ends up disappointed because of what happens in their game against Costa Rica. Whether that's because Costa Rica holds them to a shutout, Kayla Navas just steals the show and Costa Rica finds a way to win, whatever it might be. I think there's going to be one game where Costa Rica performs well, gets a little bit of luck, Navas is spectacular, and it ruins somebody's tournament. That's as far as I'm willing to go, though. But if you have Navas, you have a chance. It's not like they were scoring goals and were incredibly pleasing to watch in 2014, and they nearly got to the semifinals. If they can find a way to do this and get to the knockout stage, all bets are off. Kayla Navas is that special. But he can also only do so much if the goals just aren't coming in on the other side. So this is an incredibly tall task. I would feel differently if this was still a 2014 version. Or if you had some new pieces that are leading this attack. And it's just not the reality of this situation. So, out of respect for what they have done, I'm not writing them off. But I like I said, I have a very, very difficult time seeing how they get enough goals. They do enough over 3 games against teams that are on paper better than them to get out of this group. But I think there's going to be that one game that decides how this group plays out in some way, shape, or form, where Navas shines and they play spoiler. That's how I see this playing out for Costa Rica. That is all for this World Cup preview. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like I said at the beginning, be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. I'll see you next time.